Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this review of the Chinese Tier 5 medium tank. This is the Type T34. Now, kicking off with a little bit of a historical rundown, this is going to be really short. The Chinese Type T34 is a Soviet T34 with a Chinese paint. That's it. The Soviets supplied the Chinese with a selection of T-34s, and the Chinese used them. They subsequently made a few improvements or modifications and then gave them to North Korea eventually. But this is, to all intents and purposes, a T-34. End of video? Nah, let's actually have a look at what you have got. But just to preface this, if you know what the T-34 can do, you basically know what the Type T-34 can do, and vice versa. That might stop you watching the rest of this video, I don't know, I leave that up to you. If you still want to watch, bear in mind I'm going to ramble for a while, because that's what I do. So, let's kick off before we get any further and have a look at the Chinese tech tree, because the Chinese tech tree is a bit of a weird one. Chinese tech tree is all the same up to Tier 5. It then does various bits of splitting, but essentially up to Tier 5 it is all the same, and that's because all of these machines, they were not designed indigenously in China. When you get to some of the higher tier machines, yeah, these are proper Chinese tanks, but down here, these are all tanks that the Chinese acquired one way or another from other nations. You've got the NC-31, which is basically the French Renault FT. You've got the VAE Type B, that's the Vickers export tank. The Chiha, that was a captured Japanese tank. The M5A1 Stuart is a goddamn American Stuart, and the Type T34 is a Soviet T-34. At least in the game, these tanks often get a different gun selection, but not so much with the Type T34. So what I'm going to say about the first four tiers on this tech line are a bit irrelevant, because you have to go through them anyway. And by the time you get to the Type T34, one thing becomes very apparent, especially if you compare it with the Soviet T-34. The grind is rather simplified. We've got a top engine that we have never used before, so we're going to have to unlock that. The suspension, of course, you won't have used before. The radio is also new, so you're going to have to unlock that. The turret is clearly new, you're going to have to unlock that. And the gun is new, so you're going to have to unlock that. And just to be really awkward, if we have a look at the 5916, 5916 uses what is to all intents and purposes the same 57mm gun, but because Wargaming are darlings, they put an A at the end of the name, which means it is technically a different gun, which means it has to be unlocked again. Though, to be fair to them, this is the stock gun on the 5916, so it does come as standard, I suppose. So, sure, whatever. It doesn't really make much difference to us. It just seems a bit weird that they slightly renamed it for, I don't know. Anyway, you have to unlock all these modules. You start off completely stock, and the downside of that is the stock gun is pretty terrible. If anyone's ever played the Matilda 4, it's that gun. It's the stock gun from the KV-1. It's the stock gun from the T-34. It's the stock gun from the Matilda 4. It's the stock gun on the Type T-34. 86 penetration at Tier 5 is naff. .46 dispersion. Are you having a joke? That is awful. And the premium penetration, 102. Get out. So you do not want to be using this short 76 any longer than you have to. Unfortunately, in order to mount the top 57mm gun, you need to get the turret, which just adds to the length of the grind, because why not? So, the grind on this tank can be slightly annoying. If you've got some free XP to put down and can get hold of this top gun as soon as possible, why not? On the plus side, the top engine isn't that much of an upgrade over the stock engine. Why is that a plus side, I hear you say? Well, that means that the stock engine is okay to use on this tank. It's not the end of the world, it's just that gun that can be annoying. And that is the grind. So what do we actually get? Well, visually, the only real difference between this and the Soviet T-34 is that this has a shorter gun. It's essentially the same gun, but for some reason it's shorter on the Chinese vehicle. Also, you don't have the option of mounting a top 75 or 6, whatever it was, millimeter gun on this thing, but that was a pretty bad gun on the Russian machine anyway, so who cares? And this is where I'm going to try and not compare too much with the Soviet T-34. Try and treat this as an entirely unique, individual, definitely not copy-pasted tank, even though it is, to do a review for. So what have we actually got? Well, 450 hit points is pretty average for a tier 5 medium tank. That's nothing to get too excited about. Armour, 45 on the front of the hull, 40 on the side of the hull and 40 on the rear. On the turret, 52, 52 and 45, and those values are actually pretty accurate. When you throw in the armour angling on this tank, it means that you can bounce shots here or there against lower tier machines, or if someone hits a really lucky angle, but generally speaking you shouldn't expect the armour to do too much on this thing. 29-ton tank with a 500 horsepower engine, giving it a specific power of just over 17 horsepower per ton, which is fine. Top speed of 55 kilometers an hour, reverse speed of 20. Just to note about that top speed, sure, you can get up to it, especially on decent terrain, but in my experience, you'll spend most of your time chugging along at between 30 and 40 kilometers an hour, which is fine. It's not particularly exciting, but it gets the job done. It gets you from A to B. And a pretty decent traverse speed. Concealment, it's a medium tank, no one's going to get too excited about the concealment values. And spotting, your base view range is 350 meters, which again is very much par for the course for a tier 5 medium tank. Thankfully it's not down at the 320 levels that you get on a couple of the premium tier 5s. That is pretty ghastly. 350, it's not good, but for tier 5 it's okay. Nothing to get too excited about, but also not the end of the world. And then you get to the gun. So let's have a quick look at the gun. We're not going to talk about the stock gun because you're going to try and get rid of that as quickly as humanly possible. We're going to talk about this 57mm gun, which is the only other gun on the tank. It's a 57mm gun, surprise, surprise. 26.1 rate of fire. So this is a pew-pew. I mean, yeah. This thing fires quickly. When you start put equipment on this and all of that jazz, you reload in under 2 seconds. It is a very fast firing gun. 112 penetration for a tier 5 medium tank. It's about par for the course. The Panzer IV with the long 75 gets 110. The Chinu gets about 125. The M4 128. That 100 to 130 range for a tier 5 medium tank, fine. So the penetration is okay. If you need to or want to load some APCR here or there, that goes up to 189, which is very nice to have indeed. Just to note here, the HE rounds are garbage, don't even bother. 57mm high explosive is terrible. The average damage on this gun is quite low. It is a low caliber gun at 85. That's something to bear in mind. 0.34 dispersion at 100 meters, which actually, for a tier 5 tank, or a gun on a tier 5 tank, is rather good. Although, big caveat here, this gun reloads faster than it aims. 2.3 second aim time. I said you can get the reload down to under 2 seconds. And of course that aim time is assuming that you don't move the hull, you don't move the turret, that you are fully aimed at your target. So this gun loads faster than it aims, and so in practice, if you want to use that full rate of fire, you will be taking shots when the accuracy is far worse than that, because that .34 assumes you are fully aimed. So if you're firing at... there's a bit of a trade-off. If you are firing at longer ranges, you'll probably want that .34 dispersion, but to get that, you will have to aim the gun long enough that you're not going to make full use of the rate of fire. If you're at close range, however, you don't need that .34 dispersion, so you can just go pew 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 pew. Fine. And then you can actually make use of the full DPM of this gun. So there is that little bit of a trade-off, but if you've played with any 57mm guns before, whether they be the Soviet ones, the Chinese ones, or the American ones, or the British 6-pounders, you'll be used to that kind of gun that reloads faster than it aims. So that shouldn't come as a massive surprise to you. And it's not a bad gun to have on a tier 5 medium tank. Not a bad gun at all. In terms of crew skills, well, this is the crew I had in my Type T34, in my T34-2, my Type 58. This is my Chinese medium tank crew. They're fairly respectable. I would say what you want in this tank: Sixth Sense, repairs, they're really your priorities. The rest, I mean, Brothers in Arms at some point is nice, sure. And if you go higher up on the Chinese tech line, you might want preventative maintenance, although it's often the fuel tanks that get you set on fire, but you might want it. And you will definitely, higher up on the Chinese tech tree, want safe stowage on your loader. So put that on now if you're planning for this crew to go up the tiers. If not, repairs is fine. In terms of equipment and consumables then, gun rammer, well, who wouldn't want an extra 10% of your DPM? Vents, which is just an all-round buff for your tank, and then your third equipment choice is kind of up to you. I mentioned the gun reloads faster than it aims, so it might be that you want to take an enhanced gun laying drive to improve on that aim time so you can pull the trigger that bit sooner. If that's what you want to do, fine. Coated optics, I do not recommend. The view range is only 350, an extra 10% on that isn't going to be make or break. If you want vision range enhancing equipment, I say fit binos to this thing. You can get up to view range cap on this machine, which is quite entertaining. I'm going to show you that in a replay in a bit. Camo net, I wouldn't really bother. Enhanced suspension, nah. Toolbox, nah. It's really binos or an enhanced gun laying drive. They're kind of your choices, in my opinion. Or I guess you could get rid of the vents, take the gun laying drive and binos. That would also be an option. I'll leave that up to you. But you can't mount a vertical stabilizer on this thing. It's Chinese and it's only tier 5, so that's not an option. But yeah, do with it as you see fit. Equipment, I've gone for med kit, first aid kit, that is a med kit, repair kit and a fire extinguisher. Nothing too exciting here. Again, you could swap out the fire extinguisher for improved combat rations to improve your crew if you wanted. I wouldn't bother with the quality oil. Remove speed governors are an option, though I don't personally like them. And you could of course go for the large versions of the repair kit and the first aid kit. In terms of ammunition loadout, bear in mind your armor piercing is only 56 credits for 85 damage. It's cheap and cheerful ammunition. Your HE is 28 credits, but you won't be taking any of that because 57mm HE is trash. Your premium ammunition though is 2,800 credits for 85 damage. That is terrible. Having said that, there are some times when you might want to use them, especially the last situation I can think of, and this made me go from 10 rounds of APCR to 20. Tier 7 match, shooting an Oni. Couldn't penetrate the side of his turret without APCR. And it wasn't even a reliable penetration on the side of his tank without APCR. So, yeah. I take 80 rounds of armor piercing and 20 of APCR. You might want to go with that, or you might want to mix it up a little. Two more things to mention. One, gun depression is only 5 degrees. That is kind of underwhelming. And lastly, I did actually bring up a comparison. So this is between the Type T34 and the Soviet T34. And most of these numbers are identical. There are very, very, very small differences between them. In fact, I'm going to highlight exactly what those differences are. And bear in mind, this does not show you the soft stats on the gun or on the suspension because, screw you, why would it? Wargaming want to keep that secret, apparently. So, firstly, the turret traverse speed on the Chinese tank is 1 degree per second less. Woohoo. Who cares? Importantly though, it only gets 5 degrees of gun depression compared to the T-34's 8. That is actually a difference that might matter. All these are the same. You get 5mm less armour on the Type T-34 on the sides. Something worth bearing in mind. The Soviet machine is marginally lighter for some unfathomable reason. And so that means the power to weight ratio is marginally better, and it has 1 km/h higher top speed. Oh my god. The traverse speed on the Type T34 is better though, by a couple of degrees a second. The camo values, if anyone cares, when stationary are marginally better on the T34, and that's it. Honestly, they are the same tank. The biggest difference is the gun depression, 5 degrees compared to 8, apparently, on the Soviet T-34. I do not remember that having 8, but okay. And that's the only thing that's really worth noting. This is essentially a T-34. Okay, I'm finished now. Let's go and have a look at the armor profile and all that stuff. Okay then, so weak points, well, more module locations for this tank. Unsurprisingly, behind the driver's hatch, we have, who'd have thunk it, the driver. And behind this machine gun port in the hull, you have the radio operator. Looking at the tank from the side, you have got, interestingly, it appears you have got fuel tank toward the front of the tank and more engine and fuel tank toward the rear. So this tank may well set on fire, which is something to bear in mind. Commander sitting up here in the turret and an ammo rack towards the rear of the turret, this white region here. From the rear, again, more engine and fuel tank if anyone chooses to shoot it in the butt. And once more, you've got ammo rack at the rear of the turret. So if you want to ammo rack this thing, shoot it in the back of the turret. Once again, more fuel tanks to the front of the tank, engine to the rear. And is that a loader sitting on the other side of the turret to the commander? From the top, nothing to really note that is particularly surprising at this point. So let's go and have a look at the armor. Okay then, here we go. Having a look at the armor profile. Boom. Yeah, there's nothing too surprising about the armor on this thing. It's pretty much as advertised in the garage. 40 on the rear of the hull, 45 on the rear of the turret. From the side, you've got 40 and 52 respectively. There is some angling on these, but the armor values are not going to get obscene. You're only really going to bounce anything if either you catch a lucky angle or you're against stuff that's a lower tier to you, to be honest. Front, 78. Machine gun port just here is modelled. It's no thinner than the rest of the armor, but it doesn't have the angling, so that is a weak point if you are in a lower tier tank, like a tier 3 trying to shoot this thing. 40 to 50 millimeters, 45 to 50 millimeters of penetration should get through there. The beak down here is 80 millimeters thick, one tiny strip that is 80 millimeters thick, just casually ignore that. Front of the turret, 52. Gun mantlet, effective shoots up to 108, 149, but there are holes and there are bits where it's not present. So yeah, the armor overall really is something that, well, it's as advertised in the garage pretty much. You might bounce some lower tiers, you might get some lucky bounces, but generally speaking, whilst you should keep your armor angled, the thickness is comparable at the front and the side of the hull. If you keep it angled about like this, that's probably optimal. 87, 91, yeah, something like that. Whilst you do want to keep your armor angled, don't be surprised when things penetrate you, essentially. Here we go then, in the top tier game that is not a top tier game because I'm an idiot. When I was gathering material for this review, I could have sworn this was a top tier match, but there clearly tier 6 is in it, so it's not. I'm gonna run with it anyway, because honestly, I don't think there's anything I do in this match that I would have done and would have been massively better in a tier 5 match. And the fact that this ends up being a pretty decent result, and the Type T34 can pull this result even in a tier 6 match, well, yeah, it means it's going to do well in a tier 5 game. You get the idea. So, this is the top tier game. It's an assault match here on the Karelia map, and we are on the attacking team. Now, we are not going to be sniping or camping or doing anything else trashy like that, because why on earth would we? We've already got 3 TDs on our team, the guns of which do much more damage than ours, so screw that for a game of soldiers. The only reason I mention that is because I see so many heavy and medium tanks camping up on that hill at G7, and it's like, this is an assault game. You got 10 minutes to go over there and deliver a damn good kick-in. What on earth are you doing providing fire support in your heavily armoured IS-3? What are you doing? Anyway, rant over, I promise. So, we've gone over to the 0 line up here. Generally speaking, I prefer to initiate my assaults over here. The only times when I don't do that, really, is when I spawn at the number 1 spawn point in a kind of sluggish tank, and I don't want to waste the time coming around to this flank. So instead, I just go around to the flank that I've spawned on, just to get in the fight a bit quicker. because you really are pressured for time in these assault matches. So far our team has managed to take out a Panzer IV-H and an A-20, which is not a bad effort thus far. But we haven't actually done anything. Hopefully we're going to change that. So we got a KV-1 and a T-28 over here. And I'm taking a little bit of a risk here, but I really want to push the pace of this engagement forward, and a KV-1 can definitely be a tank that keeps you occupied for some time. So, just to pause this a second, where I've come to over here, hunkering down behind this rock, I have shots into the rear of the T-28 and the KV-1, and the enemy team don't have shots on me. The only guys who can return fire are the T-28 and the KV-1. I'm going to start shooting the T-28 because he's on lower health and I can kill him first. You don't want to split your fire between targets because as soon as you shoot someone you're going to get their attention, funnily enough. But down here at tier sort of 5, 6, often you find people aren't paying attention to their minimap and they won't notice that you're there until you start shooting them in the bum. So let's start with the T-28. I have been spotted. T-28 turns around to look at me. Rate of fire on this gun. I bounce on his bum. He comes back round for some reason and I execute him. KV-1 is still looking the other way. Finally starts turning around as I start shooting him. If I take a hit from the KV-1 here, I'll take a hit. It's not the end of the world. He even misses. And one more shot. Good night, sweet prince. And in pretty short order, that's 711 damage done. Both of those tanks dead. Our team's up 6-2. And we've freed up the T1 Heavy? T1 Heavy. And is that the Cheeto to move forward and do something? Panzer IV-H up there. Put a shot into him on the move. Maybe that would have hit. Maybe it wouldn't. Who cares? We reload fast enough that it really doesn't matter. There's a bit of assistance damage for us. That Panzer IV is taking more damage. He's using the howitzer, so we do have to be careful here. He puts one shot into us, which takes out our vision device. And good night, sweet prince. There's kill number 3. Oh god, it's an Su-85. Who misses his shot? I bounce one off his front. Second one doesn't bounce. Third one, kill number 4. Scoreline is 8-2. So we're not camping. We're trying to, as I say, push the engagement of this match because this is an assault match, and we're down to 6.5 minutes. The Marder 38T has apparently managed to flip himself over trying to come down that hill. I'm not going to drive over there to help him. It's far too far away, and really, we don't have anyone who is in a good position to help him. So we're just going to have to continue the assault without his help. Go figure. A couple of artillery have been spotted out over there. We know there's an STRV M42, that tier 5 Swedish tank, around somewhere. Both those artillery just received a damn good kicking. And we're going to try and find that STRV. There he is. There's an AT2 over there as well, but there's only 5 of them left at this point. That shot misses, but we're going to reload quickly. Not as quickly as the T1 homes in, though, and manages to take that guy down. T67 is definitely a threat. There's one shot, but he pulls back. And there's the Hummel. That's taken a bit of a battering. See if we can give him even more of a battering. AT2 is now a one-shot. Hummel is dead. So T67, AT2, and a Churchill 1. T67 and a Churchill 1. T67 looks like he has 3 marks of excellence on his T67. Well played to him, he's still dead. And that just leaves the Churchill 1 over here. So if we can put some shots into his bum, that'll be some more tasty experience and more credits. And our T1 Heavy invites me to a platoon because he's on 3 kills and I'm on 4 for a cheeky brothers in arms, assuming none of us die. Panzer T25 is going for this. And we are just going to shoot him in the side and the rear. And yep, they're done. And that was the game. So let's have a look at the post-game stats. Okay then, so we got first class mastery fighter, fire for effect, high caliber for lots of pew pew, and that cheeky brothers in arms medal as well. Finished top of our team, 1,737 damage done, 4 kills, 936 base experience, pretty easily outstripping anyone else on either team. 29 shots fired, 25 hits, 22 penetrations for that damage count. 1 hit received, the armor didn't work. yeah, shouldn't come as a huge surprise. So that's one hit taken. 2 enemy vehicles spotted, 6 damaged, 4 destroyed, 246 assistance damage, and with a premium account, that was a 41,000 credit profit. The ammunition, you'll notice I've got 0 resupply costs. I already had some shells left over from the 5916 using the same gun. But the ammunition is pretty cheap. The resupply costs for the ammo would not have been very much there at all. 27,000 credit profit even with a standard account. And you can see there, tier 5 machines can be very, very profitable. Times 5 experience for an event running at the time, so a good amount of XP made for us there as well. Let's go and have a look at a bottom tier match. Here we go then, bottom tier matchup, so tier 7 game, and we're here on Malinovka encounter match. So right at the beginning, we are going to use these binocular telescopes to do a bit of scouting, but we're going to do it relatively safely. We're not going to run around like a mad thing because the T-34 doesn't really have the raw speed to do that. This is not an LTTB or something. We're going to come forward into one of these bushes, and this works on encounter, less so well on a regular match, but it works fairly well on encounter. And binos up, and there are the bad guys. Shoot them please, allies. Shoot them please. So camping tank destroyers over there get spotted. People who are trying to get up the hill get spotted, and I'm hoping they get shot. This is the wonders of having binocular telescopes. If you can find an appropriate bush, they give you so much view range, goodbye KV2, they give you so much view range that they bump you up to the view range cap, and suddenly you're spotting people friggin' ages away. And that's the opportunity for lots and lots of tasty assistance damage. You would not physically be able to do this with optics on this tank. It just doesn't have the basic view range to do that. So, that was 931 assistance damage. It's a good way of starting off this match. We've already had a good impact on a tier 7 match. Sweet. But that position has kind of outrun its usefulness. The people who are going up onto the hill, sorry Mr. Krupstrayer, the people who are going up onto the hill have gone up onto the hill. So, yeah, we don't really have the luxury of just being able to sit in that bush all game. Good start, but move on and do something else. Now, however, again, this works better in an encounter match than a regular match. Now, however, we can just make our way along the waterfront here, and we're going to take advantage of the hill up by Smoke Me a Kipper, great name, in his AMX-12T is, and we're going to try and do some spotting from that location. The binocular telescopes are going to get less use now, and this is more where I guess your optics could arguably be a little bit more useful, but again, you don't have a fantastic base view range, you're only tier 5, so I honestly wouldn't worry too much about it. We should, however, be able to spot some people up on the hill, and with any luck, we're not going to get too badly shot up. Have a shot over on the 12T, unfortunately it bounces. I do have 6th Sense on this crew. This is the crew that was in my T34 too. We get spotted, and I just back off, and the Chaffee is dead as Smoke Me a Kipper. Well, smokes him a kipper. Picked up some assistance damage there on an MT25, so that's over 1,000 assistance damage now. Just trying to use the versatility of your medium tank to perform whatever role is needed by your team and make yourself useful however you can. And especially when you're bottom tier and on a map like this, spotting is definitely something you can do that's useful for your team. Trying to get a shot on that Hellcat. We managed one shot in, but there you can see the fact that the gun reloads way faster than the aiming reticle zeroes in. So that is something worth bearing in mind. Side of an Oni, we actually get a little bit lucky there with that penetration. You cannot guarantee to penetrate the side of an Oni. Maybe every other shot when they're flat like that. Penetration on this gun, of course, being 112. That's the one. Scoreline is 6-3, so our team seems to be in a pretty decent position. I'm not staying up there too long because someone like that Hellcat, for example, might take exception to my presence. And you've only got 450 health at the end of the day. You're only tier 5. So, oh, bye-bye Hellcat. That's effectively, well, that's 2 shots from a Hellcat. Or something like that. So it's something that you do have to bear in mind. Our IS-2 puts himself up onto 3 kills. And again, that position has outrun its usefulness, so we're going to go somewhere else. IKV there is getting wrecked, and oh god, that's a T-29. Well, on the plus side, we spotted him. On the downside, he spotted me as well, and he's got a bigger gun. We can take one hit from him if we have to. Oh, he's got more friends. We take one hit there from the Sherman Jumbo, and this guy is hopefully going to get shot a lot because that hurt. That hurt a lot. We put 2 shots into him, and no, we failed to kill the AMX-12T. This is close. There we go. AMX-12T is dead. Sherman Jumbo also dies, and the T-29 is getting pretty badly pasted here. We've only got 35 hit points remaining. But, well, that's 34 more than you need, right? Going for the lower front plate. We don't manage to penetrate, but someone else does. He is dead. And there's just an MT-25 and a Leo left now, and we know where they are. So we're just gonna, well, try and find a position from which we can shoot them without getting nailed in the face, because someone at this point could sneeze on us and we would be a corpse. Managed to kill off the Leo. That just leaves the MT-25, whatever he has scarpered off to. There he is. And just going to track this guy down and do him some mischief with any luck. We're actually using the same gun effectively here, despite the fact that he's a Soviet machine and I am in a Chinese one. VK-2801 goes down, puts a shot in. I bounce, and the VK goes in and rams the guy to death. And that's the match. Didn't last too long. Tier 7 game, over and done with. Let's have a look at the results. Here we go then. First class mastery, fire for effect, and the spotter ribbon. No giant medals or anything, but a pretty respectable game anyway. Finished second on our team, 604 damage done, 2 kills, 957 base experience. In a tier 7 match, which is none too shabby. 18 shots fired, 13 hits, 8 penetrations for that damage count. 2 hits received. Our armour once again did nothing. The armour on these tanks is not fantastic. 6 enemy tanks spotted, 5 damage, 2 destroyed, 2,500 assistance damage. That's of course where most of our experience came from. And 1.5 kilometres travelled. With a premium account, that was a 37,500 credit profit. Even with the standard account, that would have still been a 24,000 credit profit, and once again, times 5 experience event running at the time. So with a premium account, that was in total over 9,000 experience, which is pretty tasty. So, those 2 matches done. Let's go and round things off in the garage once more. So, verdict time. Is this a good tank? It's not bad. Is this a bad tank? I'm pretty sure I just said it's not bad. Speaking personally, this is, again, personal preference, I don't really like playing at tier 5. I like tier 6. Tier 5 for me is still in that the people around you are special kinds of bad, or seal clubbers. It's still that sort of region for me personally, and as a result, my opinion of this is very much shaded by the fact that it's a tier 5 machine. I have plenty of tier 5 machines, many of them premium. I don't think I've kept a single regular tier 5 off the top of my head, and this is not going to be another one. I think the Soviet machine is marginally better. That gun depression, I think, is more important than an extra 2 degrees a second traverse speed. They both traverse pretty well. And the other stats are irrelevant. Even more irritating, I find, is that this is so similar to the T-34, and yet Wargaming are making you grind through it again in another tech line. That does get my goat a bit, but there's not much I can do about that. It's not a bad machine, it's not a fantastic machine. In my opinion, it's slightly worse than the Soviet machine. Yeah, you get through it. The one nice thing is that the grind is at least a bit shorter than it is for the Soviet machine. You have fewer other modules to unlock, which is kind of nice, I guess. But yeah, that's my overall verdict. It's alright. Once I've aced this thing, which was the reason I rebought it, I'll sell it, and this crew will go... Where will they go? I've aced all the other Chinese medium tanks. I guess they'll go in the WZ-120. That's their next destination, the Tier 9. Okay. Well, that is the plan. So eventually I'll get round to acing this thing, and then I'll sell it. Your opinion may differ, and that's absolutely fine. Hopefully, you'll have found this review vaguely informative and you can make up your own mind about this thing. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my others and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.